Good evening. I am Island Origins publisher Calibe Thompson, and this is attorney Marlon Hill. And welcome to Plan Your Vote, a weekly series where we get our friends and neighbors ready for the 2020 US national election and our local elections. We'll be here with you live each Sunday evening at 7 p.m., leading up to the general election on Tuesday, November 3rd. So, Marlon, what are we talking about this evening?
Well, today we're planning our vote together.
All right.
Yeah, we're planning our vote together, Colleen.
Mhm.
So we are here together as a family. We just finished Sunday dinner, the rice and peas and the brown stew chicken done, cook up and everything. Right? Ready for all the other Sunday
No,
night.
I'm hungry. Thank you.
Well, we're planning the vote together. We're getting ready to know exactly where we need to go to register to vote, where to request our vote by mail ballots, where to early vote, and just to get ready for the November the 3rd elections. We're going to do this together, find out where all the resources are to get all the information, to get you and your family and your circle of friends ready to vote for the general elections in November.
Awesome. Before we get started, I am actually going to take a little point of privilege and just do my little opening monologue. So I'm going to take Marlon off screen for a moment because I do want to share these thoughts with you. So information keeps being revealed about how some of our leaders are trying to take our rights away from us, certain rights, right? Including systematically trying to disenfranchise our votes. Our, meaning people of color, immigrants, women, and American citizens who may not be the wealthiest among us. Many of us are becoming disillusioned because people are sharing scary or misleading information in WhatsApp groups and on their Facebook pages. And if you aren't in the media and you don't know how to verify the information you are being bombarded with, it's easy to become turned off of politics and the whole voting process. But please think about this. This is the most divided America has ever been in my 16 years here, and probably in all the years that you have been living here as well. And the tone is set from the head. So if you don't like how this country feels right now, if you want to get back to a situation where you feel like your neighbors are neighbors, regardless of their politics or the color of their skin, we have to change the divisive narrative. And believe it or not, that only happens when we vote in a way that gets things done. So whether you like what is happening and you want the red team to continue going the way it's going, or you don't like the way America is progressing and you want the blue team to step up and change the course of our country, the only way that will happen, the only way anything will change is if you put the people in power who most closely, not entirely, but most closely align with your values. They may not be perfect, but it seems like it's hard to get 330 million people on the same page. So let's use this opportunity that we have here this evening and every evening that's coming up Sunday at 7 o'clock. Let's use this opportunity to talk about the ways we can get in line with the people who agree with us and start moving this country in a better direction. And that starts with your vote. So Marlon, bringing you back in now, you shared with me a little while ago that there were some votes that people cast absentee, and I'm a fan of absentee, and I don't want to preempt anything that you're going to talk about, but you shared with me that some people sent in these absentee ballots, and not a whole lot, but some were not counted, and it was for a valid reason because people hadn't filled out their ballots the right way or sent it in the right way. So that's some of what we're going to talk about this evening, yeah?
Yeah, that's a bit of what we're going to talk about. But the challenge, Calibe, is that some of us have been here for 5 years, 16 years, or even generations. Whether you're born here or you grew up here, the key thing is, do you have all the information you need to really participate in our democracy, right? That's the most important thing. And we can't presume that everyone knows exactly what you're doing. So one of the we're going to do over the next few weeks is just to break down the simple part of how you're going to use your power. Because I learned very early on in the Calibe. I came here when I was 14 as a young teenager, and I didn't get my citizenship until I was in college, right, at Florida State University. And that is where the reason why I got my citizenship is because a light bulb went on, and I recognized the difference between having a voice and having a say, right? We don't just want you to have a voice. We want you to have a say. And one of the biggest ways that you can have a say in your democracy, locally or within the state or the nation as a whole, you must recognize when you want to have a say. And having a say is your vote. Your vote is one of the most powerful tools that you have to say what you want to say, right? We all have different opinions, different values, different interests. And your vote is the absolute asset that you're going to use to have a say when you become a citizen. And those of you who are permanent residents, we're going to talk about you at another episode of Plan Your Vote. But today, we're going to talk about the basics as to getting ready to vote, what it is that you should be doing, when you should be doing it, so that you can ensure that your say is counted. And you talked about having some of those votes being rejected, the ballot box. And we're going to talk about some of those reasons why, because you don't plan appropriately, right? If you're going to plan your vote, you need to prepare and make sure that you're doing what's necessary to have your say.
Right. So we're going to start at the beginning, obviously, you know, with registration. And I am kind of like, really, is there really anybody at this point who has not yet registered?
You'll be surprised.
I know. And there are people who are still kind of, again, disillusioned with the whole voting process. Oh, my vote doesn't count and this doesn't matter and whatever. And we realized in this country that, you know, when we met each other, we were both supporting a particular candidate. I don't know if we're talking about that on here, but you know, Florida came out, you know, Miami Gardens, where I was, came out, Broward County came out. And we were all very engaged, and we realized that we could flip the election, right? This community that we had and that we were part of could flip the election. And so when people come to me and say, my vote doesn't count, oh, I voted and the person I voted for didn't win, so it doesn't work, I feel their anger. Yeah. But what do you say to somebody in a situation like that who might not have registered at this time?
That disillusionment and apathy does exist, but I'm here to tell you and to underscore the fact that you need to get rid of that apathy and disillusionment, because it does count. I mean, in the year 2000, we had the court case that went to the U.S. Supreme Court, Bush versus Gore, 534 votes. You remember the hanging chads and all of that stuff. Both of us are from the state of Florida, but we have other viewers who are from different states. In order for the Electoral College, which exists under the Constitution, you need to get to 270 Electoral College votes. You also have the popular vote. We'll probably talk about this on another episode over the next few weeks in terms of the popular vote versus the Electoral College vote. But your single vote is one of the most important parts of the equation, right? So here in the state of Florida, we have 19 million people that reside in the state of Florida, but you have well over 15 million people that are registered to vote. Some are Republicans, some are Democrats, some are NPA, otherwise known as no party affiliation, the independent voter. Right. And you may have people that are registered in other parties as well, Libertarian and Green Party and other parties, because the Democrats and the Republicans are not the only political parties that are in the United States.
Yes, so, I have a birthday party.
Here's my voter registration card, Marlon, registered in Miami-Dade County. I'm one of the 1.5 million voters in Miami-Dade County. Calibe in Broward County, there are over 1.2 million registered voters in Broward County. And then when you register your party affiliation, Republican, REP, Democrat, DEM, or MPA, Independent, or another party. And then you also, your address, right, is connected to where you live. So you have on your voter registration card the different representatives that represent you. You have the Congress. Everyone lives in a congressional district, right? You have the state Senate, state House, county commission, because you may live in a county, but you may also live in a city. You have the school board, and then depending on where you live, you have other jurisdictions that are important for the operation of the government in your local city. So these are the people that will be on your ballot come November 3rd in the general election. And over the next few weeks, we are going to review the sample ballot with you and go through all the different races that you are registered to vote in, right?
Right.
So we just went through the primary. I was one of the candidates on the August 18th primary. If you were a registered Democrat or a registered Republican, you voted Calibe in specific races related to those particular parties because they nominated candidates. So you have the Democrat and the Republican candidates that will appear on the ballot that you'll be voting for on November the 3rd.
Okay. All right. So that is the registration part of it. So once you are registered, talk about the next steps now that are, well, you actually said something about November 3rd. And there are many people who think election is November 3rd, but election really starts from October, some kind of dates in October for the early vote.
The election starts today to plan your vote. You know, these deadlines are just deadlines, right? When you have a deadline for work.
One moment. If you are watching, we are live. So any questions that you have, I see some comments in here. Somebody says, Nicole Smith says, thank you for this. Nate Francis is asking, Marlon, who are you supporting? But I don't know that Marlon is going to say that on air. But thank you.
Today we're talking about general voter information. The election Calibe is on November the 3rd, but the deadline to register to vote is specific to where you live. In state of Florida, Miami-Dade County, the deadline for many states is October the 5th, right? It's usually 29 days before, several days before. So depending on where you live, you have the deadline to register to vote. You need to be 18 years old and you need to be a US citizen, right? To also have not been convicted of a felon. We know that here in the state of Florida, Calibe, Amendment 4 last year, if you served your time and paid your dues, you should be allowed to register to vote. We will talk about that on another episode about convicted felons having that right, because the Supreme Court has some issues there. Too many details to talk about tonight. But if you are a convicted felon and you have not fully served your time yet, you cannot register to vote at this time. So to be registered, you can register online to voteflorida.gov, or you can go to here in our trailer on the screen, you see turbovote.org. It's a nonpartisan organization. You can register to vote there. You can request your vote by mail ballot, which we will talk about in a second. But you need to be registered to vote by updating your address, very important. And another very important part of the voter registration process, Calibe, you need to make sure that your signature is up to date, especially if you are going to vote by mail, because your signature must match the signature that's on record.
Right. And I want to ask about addresses as well. If you can just segue very, very quickly. There are people who are becoming homeless because of COVID and economics and what have you. If you don't have an address, are you still able to vote?
Homeless persons can vote. You got to check the process within your particular state, because they're still citizens, right? They're not, just because you don't have a home doesn't mean that you can't have a say. Again, you have a voice. 18 years old, you're a U.S. citizen. In order for you to have a say in who you're going to pick as the next leader, you definitely must register to vote. It's very, very important for you to be part of the process.
Right. All right. All right. So that is how we get ourselves registered. Once we are registered, we are now moving into this early voting process and vote by mail process. So which one of those do we want to start talking about first?
You know, after you register to vote, this is the reason why we are having this conversation. You know, this is the time to prepare. Most people don't go to the polls, whether by mail or you go early or you go on election day, November the 3rd, because they're not prepared. They just don't know what they're doing. So rather than look like you don't know what you're doing, people just bypass the process. So you must take ownership. This is your responsibility. This is your duty, part of the democratic process. You must do some homework. So after you register to vote, every Sunday, 7 p.m. here, we are going to help you to plan your vote, help you to prepare, help you to do your research. And then after you've done your research on the different candidates that are on your voter registration card that you're going to be voting for, because you can only vote for those persons that represent your particular district or representing your state or representing the country for a particular party, right? So you do your research. Now you need to plan your vote as to exactly how am I going to vote. Depending on your state, you may be able to vote by mail. If you are a U.S. citizen and you're living in Kingston right now, or you're living in Paris, France, or in Johannesburg, South Africa, your vote by mail ballot is going out in the mail starting on September 24th. Khalid, did you know that? In a couple of weeks.
I didn't know that. I just wait for it and it shows up, and I'm excited.
And it shows up after you request it. So you need to request if you want to vote by mail because of COVID-19. You want to be safe. You don't want to be near to anybody who's exposed to the coronavirus, or you're just busy. like you, Calibe, you're just busy. You're just busybody and don't have the time for be standing in line for 2-3 hours. You need to request your vote by mail ballot, right? And you can do that.
I actually saw a vote by mail request form show up at my home for somebody else who it has an address here. One of my family members, right? It just showed up. Right. Nobody requested it. They just sent something out. Does that happen
but
everywhere?
The elections departments sent out to all eligible voters for them to request a vote by mail. So that they did that as an outreach.
And that was done everywhere, or just here in Florida?
That was depending on where you live, Dade County, or wherever it is that you live, the city, your elections department. The challenge, Calibe, is that in the United States, election rules are not uniform across the country. Election rules are not uniform within a particular state. You know, each county may have a different, so you have state election rules and then you have county procedures. So you may have early voting for 2 weeks in one county and only 10 days in another county, depending on the process and the resources that that county may have. So it's important for you to request your vote by mail. What I do is that I request vote by mail for all elections.
Right.
So I don't have to renew it. I don't have to make a choice. I just, the ballot shows up, I have the ballot, I sit down with the rest of the family and friends, we do our homework, and then we determine that we're going to, this year, we're going to be dropping it off, the vote by mail ballot, at the early voting locations. That starts on October the 19th in South Florida.
And I'm in Fort Lauderdale, so I'm actually down the road from the elections office. So I actually went in there the last time and dropped it off at the supervisor of elections office.
Did you check online whether or not they processed it?
I did not do it, but I know
you can do that. So even though you dropped it off physically, you can then go online and then check that they actually processed it and received it, and you can show it under your voter information status, put in your name and your date of birth, and then they will tell you that your actual vote was counted. If you when you submit your vote by mail, Calibe, one of the things I want to recommend, if you are open to doing it, you can put your phone number and your email address, because if there's a problem with your vote by mail, let's say your signature changed, you signed it T. Thompson, but now you're signing it Calibe Thompson, right? And it doesn't match, they can contact you and say, Calibe, your signature doesn't match, you need to come and submit an affidavit to cure it. Hopefully this happens days before November the 3rd. This is the reason why we are suggesting that you need to submit your vote by mail ballot at the earliest opportunity before November the 3rd, so that if there's a problem, that it can be cured and not affected.
And I'll share an experience. I believe that one time, and this is why I'm glad we're going through this and showing people how to fill out the ballot when we get one. But at one point in time, I didn't sign the outside of my ballot, and I got a postcard from the supervisor of elections weeks afterwards. I mean, my candidate won, so I didn't care anymore. But I got the thing in the mail to say, you didn't sign the outside of this thing. Would you like to replace your vote? So I just want to say that so people are comforted and don't feel like if something is wrong or something went awry, that somebody won't try to correct this, whatever.
Right. And it is their duty, the elections department, to do their best to cure the ballot that has any problems, right? So the deadlines are, you need to register to vote by October the 5th, right? When you register to vote, you need to request your vote by mail at the earliest opportunity that you have. If you want to vote by mail, it's just one of the 3 options that you have to vote, for convenience, for safety, or just your own choice, right?
And we want to point out that if you're watching from New York, you actually start on October, or your deadline to register is October 9th and not October 5th.
Right. So you want to check your state. When you go to turbovote.org, you can see the information for your particular state. And there are other websites out there, great websites like vote411.org, nonpartisan, great information on voting wherever you are. So after you register, request your vote by mail, start planning your vote, start researching the candidates, reading editorials, talking amongst your friends, talking amongst your stakeholders, whether it be your place of worship or your PTSA or your homeowners association. You know your people, right? You know the domino table. You're talking to people about the election. And then when is early voting going to start, right? So early voting, if your state or your county provides early voting, right? Hopefully they do, because the voter turnout, Calibe, in the primary election was only 28%.
Mm.
Voter turnout in November is going to be well over 75, 80%. So think about that, right? If there are 1.2 million people in Broward County that are registered to vote, and 80% decide to show up, everyone on election day, they don't do any early voting, no one does any vote by mail, the system would be inundated.
Right.
The lines would be so long, they would have to accommodate everyone,
Right.
but it would just be overwhelmed. And this is the reason why we have the different options, so that we can decrease the pressure in the valve, so that some people vote by mail, some people vote early, some people voted on early, and people are not waiting in long lines and being disenfranchised in that way.
Can I ask you about voter guides, right? So we just talked about planning and sitting and researching your candidates, as we have on screen here now, right?
Yeah.
And I know there are people who will call me all the time, be like, Calibe, I know you know all the answers. Who should I vote for?
Yeah.
And then sometimes I call Marlon and be like, hey, Marlon, who should I vote for? But we see these voter guides, and one is coming
slate cards, and
AFL-CIO, and one coming from the Black people, and one from the
right.
Caribbean people, and one from the teachers. How do you decide? And for me, it's about, again, who shares your values, right? So how do you decide? Because most people are not going to go do the research. They're going to call you, they're going to call me, they're going to look on our websites and say, if these are the people, Marlon or Calibe, that I trust are telling me to vote for, that's what I'm going to vote for. How do you go?
They're people that you trust. They're people that you believe in, because you know that they're putting the work on the research. They may have common interests and common values with you. But you should, again, it is your personal responsibility to be independent enough to put in the work, right? So that when you vote, you feel that your vote, the power that you are giving to the person that you're choosing, are totally in sync with believe and your interest in the things that you want to see accomplished, right? And you should not give any excuses for having transferred that power to those people. So if the slate card or the voter guides that you receive are questionable, and this is the reason why in some of our future episodes over the next few weeks, we're going to be going through some of those slate cards and voter cards. And if there's a conflict between this slate card and this slate card, why is there a conflict? We can talk about that too, you know, because there's a lot to learn when you look at the comparisons between the different voter guides, where it came from. Did it come in a particular language? Did it come from a labor union? Did it come from a place of worship or religious organization? Did it come from someone who is a consultant that represents a certain client or clients?
Right.
And you have to be mindful of all of this information that's going to come to you by text. Some of it you're going to get handed at the polls. You know, people trying to give you materials and convince you. When you get to the polls and vote for my guy and vote for my girl, you need to make sure that you are receiving the information, but sifting out what is in your best interest.
And you said, you know, who aligns with your values. And I've had conversations with young people who have said, oh, I don't like, you know, Biden, for example, because I think he may have done this with this woman and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if it's true or it's not true. And my response to this young person was, if you are aligned with an AOC or a Bernie Sanders, who say in another country they and a Biden wouldn't be in the same party, who are you? Who more closely aligns with your values? Which party more closely aligns with your values? And I do like to share with the young people that, you know, if you vote all the way down the ticket for your local people and your state representative, and you don't vote for president, or you vote for president and you don't vote for the others, the people in general who align with your values up and down the ticket are not all going to be able to pull together.
Yeah.
Because
I'm glad you're talking to the young people. I'm glad you're talking to the young people.
Certainly, right? Yeah. But the House is divided. We have a House divided. The Congress and the House of Representatives are not pulling in the same direction. Perhaps if they were all pulling red, we would have gone further in one direction and maybe it would have worked out, or maybe not. But if they the red and the blue, you know, not working in tandem as they are right now, are not syncing up, it means that we really need to get one or the other going, you know,
Right.
until we get back to the point of unity. Because face it, we can be politically correct here, but our Congress and our politics is not working across the aisle, as they say. Right?
It's very important, Cleve, on your point that you go to the websites of the different candidates, right? So we're going to go for the top of the ticket. Your sample ballots are going to go from president, Congress.
Uh-oh. Have we lost Marlon? Marlon, I think Marlon is frozen. So yeah, I'm gonna see if Marlon can come back on, because I'm not seeing or hearing him right now. Marlon, if you can click off and come back on. But I believe what he was saying is that you're going to go from president to Congress to your local elected officials to your school board members and all the way down the ticket, and not even necessarily vote for the people who are in your party, but again, vote for the people who align with the values that you have. And sometimes it is about voting along the party lines. But I really would prefer if Marlon would come back on and say that. So I see that he's gone off a little bit and he's going to come back. So we talked about researching your candidates. And again, if you are watching live, please go ahead and drop your questions in the comments, and let me bring Mr. Hill right back on here. Yes.
This point is very important, because, you know, the Russians may get involved in this. Make sure that you're vetting all the information that you're receiving. Your internet may kick out the WhatsApp message that you receive. You need to make sure that you vet any information that you receive on this election. Call a friend before you share it, count to 10, and make sure that you are sharing valid information that you're getting online.
And I would like to, if we can, did we talk about early? Did we talk about early voting? Because I want to talk about the misinformation, but I want to get
early voting really quick. Now you can go to any location, right? 2 weeks before the election. You can also drop off your vote by mail ballot. They will have some secure lock boxes there at any early voting location. That starts on October the 19th in South Florida. Check your local listings as to early voting. On election day, you must, even early voting, if you want to go and vote in person on early voting, election day, you must go to your designated precinct on your voter registration card. You can't go to any location. Mm-hmm. Please take photo ID, military ID, state ID, driver's license, passport. The key to the ID, it must have a photo and a signature. And if you don't have an ID that has both, you could use an ID with a photo and then a credit card, and then use both as your ID.
Okay. And then talk about election day voting as well.
So election day voting, you must go to your designated precinct. It usually starts at 7 a.m. As long as you are in line by 7 p.m., no matter how long the line is. And we've seen this in previous general elections, as people wait to the last minute. The lines are long, and if they're long, no matter how long the line is, if 1,000 people are in the line at 6:59, the clerk is going to come out, put a tape at 7 p.m., and everyone should be allowed to vote no matter how long it takes on election day. And then you're going to start to see the returns. We will talk about this over the next few episodes, what will happen on election night, November the 3rd. You see the returns come in. Typically, the vote by mail, military overseas, U.S. citizens voting overseas, those votes start to come in, right? The early votes start to come in because they have already been received. Those people have already voted. So now they get counted, and you see the results. And then you start to see all the news, which states are leaning blue or leaning red or leaning purple. And then we will start counting down to 270 electoral college votes. Who's leading in the popular vote? Who's leading in the electoral college vote? I had the pleasure of being one of the electors for the state of Florida in 2008 when President Barack Obama won the state 29 electoral votes. So Florida is a very, very important state because of the number of electoral votes that are at stake. So planning your vote means that you determine whether the power is retained or power is transferred based on you preparing and planning your vote to be part of the process. And this is why we are going to be spending time with you every Sunday at 7 p.m. We're asking you to send any notes in the chat as to issues that you have questions about. I don't know if we can speak to what's happening with the U.S. Postal Service, but we want to walk through with you what you have power and control over. You can't control what's happening at the USPS. You are not in Congress determining the budget and passing policies, but you have the power to register. You have the power to request your vote by mail. You have the power to sign your vote by mail ballot signature.
Yes.
Give information so that they can call you to correct it.
And you have the power to tell your family overseas, please vote from abroad.org. Apparently there's a long and strange faxing process back and forth now. And I, heard through the grapevine that some people that I had sent that information to waited, of course, until the day the ballot was due to try and fax in.
Right.
And of course, the fax machine line was clogged up. So even if you're doing that from abroad, even if you feel like it's fax, so I can wait until the last minute, please don't. It's not an email that they're going to check their email at the last minute. You cannot email and vote. They send you the ballot by email, but you have to fax it in so that they have your physical signature and all that kind of stuff. Please tell your family and friends to go and visit votefromabroad.org, turbovote.org if they're here locally, and make sure that even if you cannot vote yourself, make sure your people are engaged.
And this is the reason, Calibe, that's why we're asking you to plan your vote, right? You have to take the time to do it. The vote by mail is going out at the end of September. The sample ballots are coming out. Miami-Dade sample ballot is actually ready right now. Online, you can see who's going to be on the ballot. In addition to 6 constitutional amendments, you may have constitutional amendments in your own state, in New York, Texas, or Georgia. It is your duty to find out what it is that's going to be on your ballot. Start asking questions. Go to those trusted sources that you believe in, and you honor their word when they say it, and get yourself ready. And then once you do that, just join us back here Sundays at 7 p.m. We're going to walk through with you each ballot. We're going to try to get some of the ballots from the other states, but we're going to be focused somewhat on Florida because this is ground zero for us. But there are lessons to learn across state lines.
Absolutely. So I won't get into the detail because we're at 7:30 and I hear there's a versus going on with Patti LaBelle and Franklin.
Well, the versus going on November the 3rd. That's going to be the versus that.
When we get to did Marlon freeze again? Marlon, oh Lord. Marlon, you live in the bush, man. You need to get your internet working down there. All right. So we were talking about the versus Aretha and Patti LaBelle and the one with Trump and Joe Biden that's coming up on November 4th. But regardless, we're going to be here every Sunday evening at 7 o'clock until 7:30 talking about politics, answering your questions. I didn't see any or very many questions in the chat this evening, but please do join us again next Sunday evening at 7 p.m. It will be me and Marlon, and he won't be frozen at that point in time, but we'll be right here with you on Plan Your Vote. Y'all have a good evening, and we will see you next week.